Welcome to Sightings. I'm Tim White. Enter a new location in the annals of UFO hotspots, the Holyland. Since 1989, UFOs, crop circles, and alien beings have been sighted over Israel by a chief of police, law enforcement and military personnel, and civilians. The first-hand accounts, as told to our Sightings investigative team in Israel, bear an uncanny resemblance to encounters here, half a world away. For decades, ufologists have postulated that many biblical passages and ancient inscriptions may have been the ancient world's way of documenting UFO sightings and extraterrestrial contact. And now, those same researchers claim that there is new and compelling evidence that UFO encounters in the Holy Land are not just ancient history.
People who have been studying UFOs seriously have reached the consensus that the angels of the Bible are returning, and these are the aliens of Israel today.
The most recent UFO flap is occurring here, in a quiet rural area near the coast of Israel.
In March 1993, strange things began to happen in a little town called Kadima.
The strange things that Israeli ufologist Doron Rotem has documented have a familiar ring to American ufologists.
Between March of 1993 and June of 1993, there were at least 5 visitations in Israel. The first publicized landing was at Tziporet Carmel's backyard.
It was just amazing. And I looked at that site and I thought to myself, what could this be?
The last thing Tziporet Carmel thought was that her home's backyard had been the site of a UFO visitation. It was not until 4 other women came forward, women who did not know each other and had not heard each other's stories, that Tziporet realized that she was part of Israel's greatest modern-day UFO encounter.
These are not women who have any ulterior motive whatsoever. They have nothing to gain by it.
It was a Saturday morning. I woke up very early. I looked at the alarm clock, and it was 6:30 in the morning.
I was asleep and woke up very early Saturday morning. I heard a loud bang. I was afraid to go downstairs and check it out. I preferred to wait until daylight.
It was 3 o'clock Saturday morning. I woke up with the noise of my dog barking. I went to the door near the window. Inside the house it was dark, but outside it was light. I opened the curtains and I saw a big giant image staring at me.
His face was more oval-shaped. His eyes were shiny like a stoplight, glittering. His nose was very small like a dot.
I tried to get to him. Instinctively, I raised my hand to push him away, but it was like pushing against a wall.
And all around, there were as if flickering lights.
He didn't say anything to me, but I heard a voice in my head. It was like telepathy. And the voice said, "Go away. I could smash you like a little dog. Go back to your husband."
And I got, so to speak, an answer in my head, in English, that this is the way it should be.
Before I could move, he disappeared.
We have 5 women who don't know each other describing the same bald-headed giants. They could have described little ones, green ones, red ones, humanoid ones. They had infinite possibilities of descriptions. They all described the same 7-foot, bald, round-headed creature.
And all 5 women found crop circles outside their homes within a few days of their experiences.
More than 59 crop circles of UFO landings were made between March and June 1993. Why? I don't know.
Around the circles was plenty of weed. I went there in the rainy season still, and there was plenty of vegetation. But in the circles themselves, there wasn't. There was just scraggly brown weeds.
The grass became, within a day, completely dry. It was before high as this grass all around, became completely dry, and eventually, after 2 or 3 days, lay down just like the way it's here.
And researchers discovered strange materials clinging to the dried crops.
There were strange red stains all over, and little pieces of unknown material that now we know it was a silicone. This is it. It's very light, it's very thin, and it's bright and glowing. We sent it to the National Geological Lab, to Dr. Henry Foner, who tested it. According to Dr. Foner's testimony, this specific material we are talking about here is a pure 99.8% pure silicon. It does not exist naturally on Earth.
When details of the Kadima encounter came out in the media, other residents in the area began to come forward with stories they had kept secret for several years out of fear of ridicule.
In 1991, Ellie Cohen, a young and ambitious businessman, was awoken one night when his house glowed from the inside.
I was standing near the kitchen window. I looked up and I saw an eye, a big eye with a light.
Ellie claims that the object appeared about 3 nights. Each night, about 3.5 hours. It was glowing, it was hovering, it was moving, it made no sounds, no hum noise, and whatsoever.
It was very clear that it was a disc. I didn't need anyone to convince me that it was something from outer space.
It's just like a Mexican hat-shaped object, must be about 30 meters in diameter, with a round big hole on the bottom. This is not a hoax, this is not a fake, this is a real UFO, and it matches by its size, the size of the landing sites founded in Kadima 3 years later.
If extraterrestrials are trying to make contact, why Kadima and why now?
There's a huge radio antenna located in the middle of Kadima. Maybe it's because there's electricity in the antenna, maybe it's villages, I don't know.
Electromagnetism generated by the radio towers is similar to the type of energy measured within the crop circles. But the energy here appears to be stronger, causing instant physical effects in some of the women.
It was a feeling as if a very strange energy came literally through me and out of me, and then just evaporated.
And in January of 1995, the phenomenon took a bizarre turn.
800 meters from the Kadima antenna tower lived a farmer called Amos Guetta.
We woke up one Saturday morning. We went to feed the chickens, the sheep, and the dog as usual. At 6:30 in the morning when we woke up, it was already too late. All the animals were already dead, except the dog.
She opens his eyes and there are no eyeballs. 15 minutes later, the dog dies. She walks to her sheep pen and there are 3 dead sheep. They have been shaved around the cheekbone and have had a hole drilled to the bone itself.
No blood was found either. We tried to cut the veins of the sheep. No blood was in it. They were empty of blood.
She goes on to the chicken house where the chickens are literally frozen dead. No panic amongst the chickens. They're not scattered. They're in their roosts, dead. About 40 of them.
According to some ufologists in Israel, the significance of these events has not only scientific but also religious importance.
Israeli ufology is divided between rationalists and the mystics. The mystics believe that something extremely important is related to the landings.
Well, as one who has studied the Bible and to some extent a biblical scholar and a specialist on the ancient languages of the peoples of the ancient Near East, I became interested in the origins of their civilizations, and unintentionally perhaps I stumbled on the fact that ancient civilizations, the people at the time claimed that they were taught, they were given that knowledge by visitors to Earth from a neighboring planet. The difference between the interaction then and now was that then they did not call them UFOs. They knew precisely who was using them, who was flying, the so-called ancient gods. And today we call them aliens and are afraid of them.
The pattern of sightings in Israel continues. There have been additional reports of crop circles, UFOs, and cattle mutilations. We'll bring you more from the Middle East on an upcoming edition of Sightings. On a previous edition of Sightings, we brought you the story of 3 women in Israel, all of whom claim to have had contact with an extraterrestrial being. Sightings investigated evidence at the scene, including crop circles and mysterious silicon shards. And the investigative team learned that this was not the only case in which physical evidence could be found after a UFO sighting in the Holy Land. In the annals of modern UFO hotspots, Israel has been a blank page.
When I researched my book, the only public mention of UFOs that I found were from 1952, from Haifa. There were 2 sightings. That is all I could find until Shikmona.
Barry Chamish is an author and journalist who has written about a recent rash of UFO sightings and encounters that began suddenly in 1987.
This is on the evening of Rosh Hashanah in 1987. Ami Achrai is returning home from Tel Aviv, his home in Kiryat Bialik, near Haifa. There is a beach called Shikmona, just before the city of Haifa. He sees a red object fly into the air, hover, dip.
Underneath there was a red glowing spot about 1.5 meters in diameter. There were immense flashlights, and there was a very loud noise, a whirlpool, as if a helicopter was going to crash.
He stops his car, gets out of the car, sees the object return, and there is a huge flash.
It suddenly disappeared. Only a big red spot remained, and in a second, it leaped into the sky and vanished.
Ami was shaken by the inexplicable UFO encounter. He tried to put it behind him, to dismiss it as an asteroid or a comet, but something drew him back to the scene. And in the daylight, he found concrete remnants of his experience.
Imagine intense heat burning sand and vegetation in the shape of a UFO. Inscribed in the right-hand corner, a clear-cut picture of an astronaut in front of the dashboard.
Not only was there an indelible image in the sand, testing at the site revealed the ground itself had taken on unusual properties.
The land was 671% more magnetic than usual land.
At the request of Sightings, soil samples were taken from the scorched earth at Shikmona Beach for a detailed analysis by biophysicist W.C. Levengood. His findings confirmed that the ground had new characteristics.
One was sort of astounded by the tremendous change in the ratios of the elements. For example, ordinary zinc was increased 104 times, whereas our other elements stayed absolutely the same.
But that finding paled in comparison to what Dr. Levengood found while he was preparing to take a photomicrograph of the soil sample.
As I was adjusting the camera to get the photograph, to my astonishment, the soil appeared to be melting. What I found here was that there was a coating on the soil of a very low melting material. I have consulted with a geophysicist, and there is no explanation. This does not occur in nature. There's no natural way that this amount of hydrocarbon would be on the soil.
5 months after the Shikmona Beach sighting, just 1 mile away in the city of Haifa, Rosetta Kalfan and her family spotted bizarre lights in the sky. They were able to film the UFO with a home movie camera.
We were chatting, and suddenly my sister looked up towards the window and saw a glittering light in the air. I got up quickly, and we both rushed over to the window. I told her, "Do you know what that is? That is a UFO."
The light was golden, like nothing I've ever seen in my life. A real light beam radiating out from it. It was shocking, truly shocking.
There was a UFO that stayed there 17 minutes over the sea and then disappeared very quickly until it became small as a star.
You see windows, and this is possibly the most outstanding feature. And certainly in the film, you'll see that at the beginning, Rafi Malka is clever enough to get background. There's no mistaking this as part of the features of the hill or the Haifa area. It's not a natural feature, it's certainly dangling in the air. It moves, it has lights, and it was witnessed by experts. I believe that was a tremendously documented UFO.
2 years later, in 1991, Yossi Ben Ma'as was leaving his real estate business in Haifa for his home in nearby Beit Shan. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he was nearly blinded by a brilliant shaft of light.
There was a huge sheet of light. It was right before my eyes. It was spectacular. It was a very calming light, but I was afraid it would go to Beit Shan, where my friends and family are. So all of a sudden, it changes course, as if it was reading my mind, a kind of telepathy between us.
Yossi immediately called the Beit Shan Police Department.
Chief of Police, Yitzchak Mordechai, is awoken at 3 in the morning, goes outside, sees an enormous object in the air.
It looked a little bit like a boomerang, but it was a shape that I never saw before. It had a unique power and color, a special glow which was very different from anything I saw before. I didn't know how to react.
He radios in to headquarters, calls the Air Force, says, "This is what I got."
They asked for the exact location of the object. I gave them the location, and they couldn't find the object on the radar.
Because of Beit Shan's close proximity to the Jordanian border, the Israeli Defense Forces sent 300 troops into the area to track the unidentified craft.
It was dragging a convoy of armed men for 3 hours on a trail up to the Jordanian border, which is a very sensitive place, but it seems to know where the Jordanian border is, and heads back. At 5:45 in the morning, in broad daylight, it disappeared in a flash.
Chamish has developed a controversial theory that these 3 UFO sightings are part of a pattern dating back to biblical times.
People who have been studying UFOs seriously around the world have reached the consensus that the Bible is a convincing UFO story. I came to the same conclusion that the Old Testament, from the pillar, the cloud that led the Hebrews out of Egypt, that glowed at night and stopped the Egyptians, all the way through the prophets, were, in fact, UFO-related.
Chamish also believes that stories of alien abductions in Kadima, as reported previously on sightings, are also part of the centuries-old pattern.
Shikmona, they were announcing in black and white, "We are here." At Beit Shan, they're saying, "All right, now we've got 500-600 of you seeing us, and you can shoot at us if you want to." Kadima was stage 3, "We want to meet you."
And stage 4, according to Chamish, is foretold in a prophetic passage from the Bible.
From Kedem, they shall go up to Jerusalem. In other words, Kadima is the next hop towards the revelation of the UFOs in Jerusalem.
The investigation in Israel is ongoing. A sightings team is now following up on late reports of activity in the town of Yatzitz on the Mediterranean Sea. An eyewitness there claims that he has evidence of UFO contact in the form of mysterious footprints. Sightings will bring you more on this story after the investigation is complete.